You don't start out trying to control people. You start out trying not to disappear. Somewhere in your story, trust was not safe. You learned that honesty made you vulnerable, that transparency made you small. You learned that in order to be seen, you had to perform, predict, and preempt. You had to become a quiet architect of every interaction, reading expressions, adjusting your tone, saying what others needed to hear just to keep the peace. And it worked. That's the paradox. The same psychological reflex that once saved you from chaos now destroys your intimacy. The same hyper-awareness that once protected you now isolates you. You learned how to manipulate, not because you're evil or calculating, but because, as a child, manipulation was translation. It was how you turned fear into strategy, unpredictability into control. You told yourself, if I can just read them right, if I can just make them happy, if I can just anticipate the danger, maybe this time I'll be safe. But what began as emotional self-defense became emotional warfare. You grew up mastering the art of survival in the emotional gray zone, where kindness becomes currency and connection becomes negotiation. And here's the cruel paradox. You manipulate not to dominate, but to belong.
Let's be clear. Manipulation is not just a behavior. It's a nervous system adaptation. Psychologically, manipulation often emerges from insecure attachment, specifically anxious preoccupied or disorganized attachment styles. In these early relational environments, love was conditional. Affection came and went based on compliance, performance, or emotional temperature.
So the brain adapted. It developed hypervigilance, a neurological overactivation of the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, regions responsible for threat detection and emotional monitoring. You didn't consciously decide to control. Your body did it for you. It learned that emotional safety depends on prediction, not presence. Three key psychological mechanisms drive this pattern. 1. Attachment dysregulation. When early caregivers are inconsistent, the child's sense of safety collapses. The brain internalizes a belief. People can't be trusted to stay unless I manage them. Manipulation becomes the invisible glue holding fragile attachments together. Defensive empathy. This is when empathy, normally a bridge, turns into a weapon. You sense others' emotions so sharply that you start to shape their perceptions preemptively. You modulate your behavior to control reactions before they even occur. Cognitive distortion of agency. Over time, your mind rewires to equate control with safety. You believe you're responsible for others' emotions. This leads to a subtle yet devastating identity shift. You stop being yourself and become a puppet master of your own existence. From a developmental lens, manipulation is not malicious. It's adaptive social intelligence grown in toxic soil. It's how the psyche compensates for powerlessness. When a child's reality is unpredictable, the mind becomes a strategist, turning every interaction into a potential test for survival. In adulthood, that adaptation doesn't vanish. It simply hides behind charisma, intellect, or emotional sensitivity. But survival always extracts a price. Every manipulator, no matter how subtle, pays in authenticity. The currency of control is the self. You begin to lose touch with your own needs because every move is calibrated for someone.
The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote about will to power, the primal human drive to assert control over chaos. But in the psychological landscape, that will to power becomes a prison when born from insecurity. You're not controlling reality, you're running from it. Carl Jung once said,
"The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But for the manipulative archetype, that privilege feels dangerous.
In communication, you say half-truths. In communication, you say half-truths or strategic omissions to maintain harmony,
Convincing yourself you're avoiding conflict. In friendship, you perform empathy so perfectly that no one ever asks how you are. In work, you curate your persona to fit what the environment rewards, often burning out from emotional labor. Internally, you script imaginary conversations, replay arguments, and try to anticipate betrayal before it happens. In love, you find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable people because their distance feels familiar, and manipulating it feels like.
Healing from manipulation isn't about never influencing people again.
Influence is human. Connection is mutual influence. The healing is about motive, about moving from control to authenticity. It begins with inner reparenting, creating safety within, so you no longer need to engineer it externally. You practice radical honesty in small doses. You start saying, "I feel hurt," instead of pretending you're fine. You stop reading faces and start listening to your own heartbeat. You also begin shadow work, acknowledging the manipulative part of you not as a villain, but as a protector. This is the paradox of integration. You must love the mask before you can take it off. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom isn't found in controlling others. It's in understanding why you tried to. So if you've recognized yourself here, if you've seen the quiet strategist, the people reader, the subtle influencer inside you, know this: it's not a flaw, it's a scar. And scars don't need to be hidden. They need to be understood. Because when you finally stop manipulating for love, you make room for love that doesn't require manipulation. You'll realize that authenticity, though terrifying, is the only form of control that doesn't cost your soul. So before you trust anyone, start by trusting yourself. Trust that you don't need to perform to be safe. Trust that you can survive truth. And trust that the person you're becoming is far more powerful than the mask you once needed to wear. Because healing isn't about being good. It's about being real. Read before you trust anyone. Not because the world is dangerous, but because your inner world deserves to be understood first.